You know, there's been many infamous criminals in Canadian history, mostly murderers and serial killers and different people have that ilk. But this guy were sort of like the roving man's John Dillinger in Canada. A handsome guy, former soldier, former actor, very, very charismatic. So today we're talking about the character that probably fascinated more Canadians during the Second World War than anybody else, Edwin Alonzo Boyd. Now, Edwin Alonzo Boyd, again, primarily a Canadian bank robber and leader of the infamous Boyd Gang, who were never initially named after him, but the media caught on and called it the Boyd Gang. Now, his career made him a notorious Canadian folk hero to the soldiers and the downtrodden throughout Ontario and central and western Canada. Not as much on the maritime side because we didn't have enough media to cover him successfully. Besides, the crime print magazines. Now, Boyd was born on April 2nd, 1914, in Toronto, 4 months before the British Empire, which Canada was part, entered World War One. His father, Glover Boyd, joined the army in August of 1915. It did not return home from the war until a few years later. The apartment the family lived on was too small, so they moved to a duplex on B Street and Todmorden, an area behind the Don Valley, in East York, Toronto, Ontario. Soon after, Edwin's mother Eleanor became pregnant again, so Glover Boyd took a job at the Toronto Police Department. Edmund was enrolled in school in the 1921-22 year, but due to an incident which has been lost in the midst of time, there he did not remain for very long, and during his first year of schooling, the family had moved again. He did then switch to Gled Hill Public School to finish out the semester. In September 23, Glover moved the family a few blocks north, and Ed switched to Second Public School for a brief period of time before being transferred back to Gled Hill Public School. Then the Boyds moved again, this time to Gleamount Avenue, and Boyd transferred to yet another school, this time to Earl Beatty Public School, and it was there that Boyd became more of his own person, joined the school soccer team so that for years his picture hung in the hall of the school. He also joined the YMCA marching band, where he mastered a mouth organ and accompanied the band when he won a world championship at the CNE. In early 1930, his brothers Gord and Norm Boyd contracted scarlet fever, and while taking care of them, Eleanor Boyd became sick herself and unfortunately died from the disease. In 1933, Edwin had his first brush with the law when he was picked up for vacancy by the RCMP. Now, a few years later, he followed his father's footsteps by joining the Canadian Forces, the Royal Canadian Regiment, 1st Division. In June 40, his regiment crossed the Channel to France. When his regiment was posted to Reigate, Surrey, Boyd met his first wife, Doreen Mary Frances Thompson. On August 20th, 1941, almost 9 months to the day after Boyd and Thompson married, she gave birth to a son, Edwin Alonzo Boyd, Jr. The baby was 2 days old when an air raid siren sounded. The bombing resulted in the baby suffering a cerebral hemorrhage, for which he died. He was buried on August 30th in York Cemetery. In early 1941, Doreen went to York and joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, but was too short to be a truck driver, so she became a motorcycle driver to join her husband in the war. Boyd was eventually transferred to the Canadian Provincial Corps on July 27, 1942, because he was displeased with the Army. Soon after that, his wife discovered that she was pregnant again, and this time they had twins on December 21st, 1943. Boyd was officially discharged from the war effort on May 24, 45, 16 days after VE Day, which was May 8th. After that, Boyd failed to find adequate permanent employment and turned to crime to provide for his wife and 3 children. Now, this is documented heavily in various publications of the time, including the Gordon Pinson movie, the various books that were written. They said basically he turned to crime because there wasn't enough money with day-to-day menial work or what they call, low pay. Now, on September 9, 1949, he robbed a North York branch of the Bank of Montreal, which is now BMO. Between September 49 and October 51, he pulled at least 6 bank heists, what we know of, but some people say a little bit more, a little bit less. Now, He joined up with another robber and carried out several other bold bank robberies. Now, he had a reputation for jumping over counters, moving quickly, and carrying a gun, which is kind of mimicked in the Gordon Pinson version of Boyd's life. His partner, old Howard Galt, got caught and told all. They both went to the Don jail in Toronto. Now, while Boyd and his partner were robbing banks, another more violent gang was also doing the same thing. Lenny Jackson, a member of that gang, was caught at the same time as Boyd, and he soon began to swap notes. Soon another experienced bank robber, Willie Jackson, which was no relation to Lenny, alias the Clown, arrived at the Don jail awarding transfer to infamous Kingston Penitentiary for a 7-year sentence. Lenny Jackson had also lost a foot in a railway accident and had a wooden foot in which he stored several hacksaw blades. Now, the Boyd gang evolved from this. On November 4th, 1951, Boyd and the Jacksons hacksawed to the bars at the Kingston Penitentiary, went over the prison wall, and escaped. They met a friend, Vena Lesso, from Cochrane, one of the violent members of Lenny Jackson's original gang, and the four became a team. Now, Lesso was a talented musician who couldn't find work. He eventually changed his name to Steve SUCHAN and became a bank robber. They soon pulled off a series of robberies, including the biggest one in Toronto history. Now, the newspapers dubbed the new group the Boyd Gang, seeing Boyd himself as the brains behind the operation. Now, Willie Jackson was eventually arrested and sent to the Don jail, and Boyd went into hiding with his wife, Doreen. Now, the police eventually received numerous calls from residents in West Ferris and Powhassan, Ontario, and from a pharmacist in North Bay, but he did not pan out. After 10 days, men were seen at a bar in the Don Valley, and all members of the Boyd gang, excluding Edwin Alonzo Boyd himself, were captured without incident. Now, with Boyd the only gang member left to be captured, Detective Adolphus Dolph Payne kept Boyd's brother Norman under surveillance and discovered that he rented a flat on Heath Street, but had not moved in yet. He secured a key to the back door from the owner and watched from a neighbor's house as Boyd moved into the flat. Wanting to avoid a shootout, he waited until he was sure everyone was asleep. At the crack of dawn on March 15, 1952, the police crept inside the house and captured Boyd and his wife while they were still in bed. Now, Boyd's brother, who was sleeping in another room, was also apprehended. Now, media coverage of Boyd prior to this and this case was heavy, as the Toronto Nugget reported the event by stating Edwin Alonzo Boyd, Canada's public enemy number one, surrendered meekly with his henchmen to two suburban detectives, ending the greatest criminal manhunt in the Dominion's history. So we really don't know. Being the only criminal of his kind in Canada like this, but also in the media center in Toronto, who were selling papers like crazy. Now, eventually, SUCHAN and Lenny Jackson were executed for killing Detective Tong. Now, Boyd received 8 life sentences and Willie Jackson 30 years. Both were released on parole in 1962 after serving 10 years in Kingston Pen for bank robbery. Now, according to published reports in the Toronto Star, December 14, 1962, ex-bandit Boyd calls for police. Edwin Alonzo Boyd, who has spent most of his life dodging police, asked for their assistance last night to arrest his wife and her companion. He set up housekeeping in a West Central house for himself and his children. Last night, Boyd sent a hurried call for help to Markham Street Station when a man and woman arrived at his home and battered down the front door. The woman said she wanted to pick up clothing. Booked on charges of being drunk were Doreen Boyd and Keith Costan, 40. In court today, she pled guilty and was fined $5. She was returned to the cells until she could raise the money. Now, Boyd, under the name John, went to Victoria, BC, where he drove a bus for disabled people, and after divorcing Doreen, married a disabled woman when he met her on the bus. He took care of her for the next 35 years until he went into retirement home. Now, there's been various documentaries of interviews for Edwin Alonzo Boyd throughout the years, but the most important one was this. 2 months prior to his death, Boyd told a CBC producer that he once killed a couple and left their bodies in the trunk of a car at High Park, Toronto, years before his notoriety as a bank robber. The crime does fit the September 11, 1947 murders of Ira Scott and George Vegas. Now, before a formal investigation into his confession could commence, on May 17, 2002, after a visit from his wife and his son, and a phone call from his former war bride and the mother of his 3 children, Edwin Alonzo Boyd died at the age 88. Now, 2 books have been written on the Boyd Gang, and one was made into a successful movie. Now, Girls in the Gang, a musical written by Raymond Story and John Ruby, was based on the story of the Boyd Gang. It debuted in '87 at Toronto's Factory Theatre, produced by Diane English, and won a Dora Maeve Moore Award for Best Musical. Now, in '98, Boyd was profiled in a documentary on CBC's Television Life and Times, wherein he admitted that he committed many more robberies than he'd been charged with. A fictionalized film on Boyd's life, Citizen Gangster, was released in 2011 with Scott Speedman from Felicity fame plays the part of Boyd. And of course, The Times of Edwin Alonzo Boyd, the CTV movie with Gordon Pinson, which could be true or not true because it seems too good to be true. But if you can find the movie, it might be available for free on YouTube someplace, while the Citizen Gangster movie is on pay channels in Canada. Now, in the United States, the case is also part of coverage in a special episode of Law & Order Special Victims Unit. May have been partially based on Boyd's last days. Now, in this episode, a former bank robbery, the great actor Brian Dennehy confesses to a murder shortly before dying. Scheherazade as it's called. Scheherazade. So I can't pronounce the German of that, but you can find it on IMDb, again, the Law & Order Special Victims Unit. Now, do I believe that Edwin Alonzo Boyd was a bank robber? Yes. Do I believe he had knocked off those 2 people for money? Well, it doesn't take much to go from a bank robber to a murderer. Now, the reason why he was eventually released, allegedly he was compassionate to wounded veterans when he took more money, and he liked money himself, so he was not only doing it for his family, he thought he was doing it to the former residents. But again, 8 life sentences only getting 10 years. This is way before, again, the repeal of capital punishment. Boyd could not be executed for his other murders because he wasn't a direct participant in those, but maybe in a U.S. Court system, he probably would have been executed because, the connection of the criminal element. So Edwin Alonzo Boyd, it is what it is. Some people see him as a folk hero. I see him as a straight-ahead, compensatory to murder and robber, and basically mentally incompetent, or like what I call mentally ill. He was 5 cents away from being a serial killer, and I think in 2020, if given a chance, he probably would have murdered and robbed if he was given that opportunity. I don't see any hero in this guy, but the 50s were a different time. The 40s, post the Second World War, poor people wanted something to take off their mind of their regular humdrum life. And Toronto is the media capital, or Southern Ontario is the media capital of Canada. And his name was on every newspaper, ladies and gentlemen. Boyd not caught, Boyd at large. Just go back in the archives of all the major papers. You'll see what I mean. For like a 3-4 year period. And don't forget, the apprehension of the gang came from the fact on CBC's first television broadcast, which was hosted by Lauren Green. It talked about the escape from the jail and eventually led to the capture. So you get all these Canadians watching CBC TV for the first time under black and whites. What do you see? Edwin Alonzo Boyd. It'd be similar to having John Dillinger be the first broadcast on, the old NBC from the early 1930s, like he's murder and stuff like that. Very amazing life. So this is our latest true crime podcast. If you like what we're doing, talking about Canadian crime history, please let us know. If there's any specific situations, we don't want to exploit the criminals and the innocent. It's just for a public service we're doing this. But if you'd like us to look at a possible topic, please leave a comment, leave a basic information what you'd like to see. My expertise in covering murders in New Brunswick goes from the mid-1980s to the early 2000s. I covered the Alan Legier case, several other murders, Hamilton, Balmoral, Lorne, Batters, Beldoon, North Shore, what I call North Shore crime from, early 1980s with the Bernard case, all the way up to eventually Legier's, to Legier's capture and conviction the various murders in the North Shore of New Brunswick into the late 1990s. So I don't talk about this on top of my hat. I've covered or have researched or have written essays on criminal history, especially in the Maritimes, and it's a different situation. I can talk about it without thinking exploitation, because Americans don't really care about Canadian crime, and Canadians know of these crimes, but they don't really judge. You take each case, unless it's the Carla Mocha case. That's something I'll never cover in a podcast, because I can't be allowed to curse and tell her go to hell 50,000 times in one podcast. That's something I'll never touch or will never want to write about. I never have written about the Mocha case, because I can't be objective. Anyway, hope this finds you well. Have a great, as we say, Boxing Week and Wrestling Day week. Bye.